welcome to the channel. I'm Summer. If you're new here, today we are taking this layer-free, lifeless hair and transforming it into a beautiful layered haircut with shape, fullness, and movement, all while showing you how to create the perfect shorter layers for you or your client. Tools I'm using for today's video are my shark fin shears and Cricut's extra long cutting comb for the haircut. And later for our blow dry, we will be using Cricut's 390 brush along with the SRI Dry Q. This is a very luxurious blow dryer with amazing features. You get 3 attachments with this dryer, and my favorite attachment is the extra wide concentrator nozzle that gives maximum coverage when drying your hair. And SRI was kind enough to sponsor this video, and I will share more on this beauty later. Let's get this cut started. Okay, I've got her hair prepped and ready, so we're gonna move right into sectioning. I am gonna be bringing up the length a little bit. This mannequin desperately needs a haircut, but probably about 1.5 to 2 inches. So we're gonna do the standard parting right at the ear, because what I always like to do is start in my back and then I work my way towards the front. And then I am gonna be creating some nice face framing as well. She is literally all one length everywhere, so there is no shape and no movement. And so now that we have our fronts sectioned off, we are gonna move directly into cutting that back perimeter. And to do that, we're just gonna take some nice sectionings. So we're gonna come right down the middle and we're gonna break this off into 2 separate subsections. So why I'm doing that is it's gonna allow for, 1, cleaner lines, but also more control when going to cut that perimeter. Okay, so like I said, we're gonna be bringing up the length a little bit, but it's gonna be left long enough that this person can easily get their hair pulled up into a ponytail, but we will have plenty of shape and movement, and this mannequin was in desperate need of a haircut. And I'm just gonna do a nice, clean, blunt line. I'm going straight across. I'm choosing to do a blunt line because I wanna keep that perimeter nice, thick, and full, where point cutting will soften it up. If somebody has ridiculously thick hair, I'll go in and lightly point cut, but for the most part, I like to keep the perimeter nice and blunt. So then I'm gonna come in and take my next section. I've got this combed, so it's nice and smooth, and we're just gonna take about 1/2 inch here and clip that up, and do the same on the other side. It's much easier and much cleaner to take your sections that way. Combing straight down, I'm using the fine side of my comb. Can easily see through to my guide. Cut. If you are new, welcome to the channel. If you've never been here before, Styles by Summer consists of all hair cutting tutorials. I love doing some short layers, really all layers, but short layers are probably my most fun haircut that I like to do. So if you're new here, welcome. And if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Always happy to have you here. So we're gonna do our last section here for our perimeter, and then we're gonna be moving into those layers. Okay, so she is literally all one length. There is absolutely no layering whatsoever in this haircut. So I'm gonna be creating rounded layers that are gonna go all the way around the head. And what I mean by that is, as I pull out the hair from each section, we're gonna be pulling it out and going up with it. So that way there's constant movement. They're not all coming up to the same point. we're going with layering all throughout. So I'm gonna take my first section here. I always start off in the middle to create my guide, and I like to comb this hair forward just to get it out of the way. And we're gonna create them short enough that you see a bunch of movement, but long enough here where we still have a good amount of bend here. I don't like to make them like so short where they're looking a little like mullety. So what we're gonna do to start our guide, fine sign of that comb. I'm gonna grab my scissors. We're gonna come straight out. You can see already that that perimeter has fallen some, and we're just gonna cut. And then when I do the layers, I do like to do a light point cutting where I'm cutting lightly into it. I'm not doing that hard blunt line like I did for the perimeter. Come straight out, and you'll just continue to follow your guide. And I'm coming straight up at that very tippy top and point cut into that. So we've got our shortest layers coming right at that occipital bone area. So we've got plenty of hair here that'll bend nicely when we go to blow dry later, or if you want to curl it how I have my hair curled today, you'll get plenty of movement as well with that. It won't be too short. So we're gonna come in and take our next section. I'm gonna comb this hair over out of the way. And you can always re-spritz when you need to. It's best to have the hair damp while you're cutting. You don't want it too dry. So I'm coming over a little bit with my layer because this is a traveling guide, so I'm not coming back to the center. I'm lightly coming over from a different direction, pulling straight out from the head. I see my guide down here, cut. So pros and cons of shorter layers, medium to shorter layers like this versus long. The pro is you're gonna have a little bit more movement, so you'll be able to achieve more volume all throughout your haircut. A lot of these pros can also be cons though, so it depends on what you're wanting. But you'll get more weight removed with shorter layers. So if you're somebody who has a lot of thick hair and you're like, I need this hair out, layers like this are gonna be more ideal. But if you're somebody who is like, well, I don't want a ton of movement, I want to keep my weight, I want to keep my thickness, then shorter layers are not the most ideal for you. You would want to do a longer layered haircut, which I have several of those for tutorials. So be sure to check out my cutting tutorial playlist if you've never looked at that before. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna keep rounding with this, creating our layers. After I finish this side, we're gonna go directly to our other side, and then we'll get into the side layering and creating that face frame. We're coming back to the center guide now. Push that hair out of the way. And we will take our first section on this other side of the back and work on our layers on this left side. This is actually my old guide. I didn't go over enough. I can see that guide there. Point cut into that. Gonna take a little bit from my guide here and into the next section. That perimeter's fallen. We've got 2 more pieces, this piece and one last section on this side of the head before moving into our sides. Much more shape. So what I like to do now is I will come in and I'm gonna cross-check these back layers. So we did everything rounding with the head. So to check them, we're actually gonna be coming straight up and cutting across to make sure everything lines up. So I will just take, with my clip, I'm just gonna come right along the top here. And we're gonna be combing straight up. And there's just a little bit of extra length over here. And we're just gonna point cut into that. And so what I'm gonna do is continue to do that all the way up, just to double check. And at this point, I'm just gonna kind of pull out lightly because if I go all the way up, there won't be much to cut. Good. Alrighty. Now the fun begins. I love my side layering and face framing that I love to create, but first we have to create that perimeter and match up the length that we took off from the back into the sides. Now this part is optional. I'm gonna cut it with a very slight angle going towards the front, just ever so slightly. Again, that's totally optional. If you wanted it evened off, you would just simply, you know, make it even. I just wanna have just, I mean, the tiniest bit. It won't probably even be that noticeable. Her hair is pretty fine-ish, thinnish. So I'm actually gonna do this without sectioning it off, living on the edge here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in and just lightly, literally angle my fingers here and cut and meet to the back. Super easy. If you have super thick hair or your client has super thick hair, definitely take sections here. But for finer, thinner hair types where you can easily see it, it's fine to do it the way I am. And then usually right towards the very front, I'll go back off to more of a level and I won't do as much of an angle. Okay, and now we're gonna cut the perimeter on the other side first. And one thing that's nice about leaving it angled in the very front is if you have a client who's like unsure of the length that they want removed. You know, sometimes, I mean, it's more specific, but sometimes clients, they're like, I don't really care about the back, it's all about the front, you know? So that's why angling it, it's just like a little insurance policy. And when you're doing it not as severe as how I am here, it doesn't really look like that traditional like angled haircut. It just keeps it nice and clean. Gonna come in, just lightly angling my fingers. Cut. And then what I'm gonna do before creating my layers, I'm gonna check her front pieces to see if I need to adjust anything. So you would stand directly in front of the client and you're just gonna bring it to a point that matches where they part their hair. That's how I like to do it. If it's right in the middle, I'll do it to the middle. If they part it on whatever side, I'll bring it a little bit over to whatever side they part it on. And we're just a little bit longer over here. So I'm just gonna lightly shorten it up. You could also wait to do this step until everything is dried as well. That's personal preference, but it doesn't hurt to do it when it's wet. Okay, so to create her layers around the face, she is a little bit kind of on the thinner side, especially as far as mannequins go. So I'm gonna be over directing back away from her face to create the layers and wait until it's dry to see if I wanna add any more, just because if you remove too much weight around their face, it tends to look a little too thin. So that's what I'm gonna do to just give me a little bit of an insurance policy. All right, so we're gonna be taking our first guide here, right at the ear. I'm gonna comb this forward, get it out of the way. And I'm gonna almost break this into two little parts, just because it's easier, I feel like, for you guys to visually see. So we're gonna be over directing the hair back towards that guide we created in the back, and you'll be able to see your guide, and you're just gonna cut into it. And I like to break it up sometimes into a section like this, because you are gonna be like lightly twisting your fingers, and I feel like it's just easier to see, especially if you're newer, than taking one big section here. And just come up. I see my guide here, and we're just point cutting into that. And you're gonna take your next section. Again, we're angling back, and what the angling back does is it directs the hair to come to the back to maintain more of this weight in the front. All of that perimeter has fallen and cut. And then I'm gonna leave all of this actually first, because we're gonna be face framing that, and I don't wanna jeopardize any weight out of here more than what we need to take out. So I will wait to tweak that after the face frame. So we're just gonna do the other side, same, over directing everything back, and then we'll get right into our face frame. Alrighty, so we've got our layers created on the side, and now we're gonna work into our face frame, which I'm gonna do actually like a nice side swept bang. So you've got some extra added movement to the very front. And then I'm re-spritzing because I just want the hair nice and damp to get nice even tension everywhere. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is come in and take my nice guide for my side swept bang. We're gonna come at the top of the head, a triangle. We're right here on the brow line. I'm gonna match that up on this other side. And I'm gonna do this a little bit heavier, I think, of a swoop for the bang. Make it a little dramatic. I'm gonna actually take a little bit more from here. Okay, so what we're gonna be doing is taking this first side section here and breaking it into two parts to sort of create the guide for our side swept bang. So I want you to envision this. I wanna be able to have some nice swooping going here. So that way when you're blow drying your hair and using the round brush, you really get nice, fluffy side swept bangs. And so I'm gonna be using sort of the nose as my guide, a little bit longer. We'll go right the top of the lip actually, so that way we can shorten it if we need to. So I'm just gonna come in with my shears, using the wider side of my comb here. So wider side of my comb, I see the top of her lip. And we're just gonna come in at an angle and we're just gonna sliver right on down and back. As easy as that. So we have a nice side swept bang. We still got plenty of movement here to swoop and get that nice bend and bounce. And so what we're gonna do is take the rest of this side swept bang here. I'm gonna follow up with that guide and I'm gonna just sliver down and go back at the same time. And I want this to be a little bit more dramatic here, so I'm gonna actually change the angle. When you are slivering your shears, if you sliver in and pull the hair towards you, you're gonna remove less hair. If you sliver and move the hair out, you're gonna be cutting into that a little bit more severely. So I'm just gonna make that angle a little sharper. And I just cut off just a little bit extra of length here, nothing crazy. And so now what we're gonna continue to do on this side is just grab our hair on these side sections and continue to sliver down, meeting everything. So all this will be getting removed. And we're just gonna take a little bit at a time. Come in where your last angle starts or stopped. And then at this point, I'm not gonna go as back with it. I'm gonna keep it kind of at a straight point. I'm not pulling it towards me, but I'm not pushing it back, just to maintain a nice even shape. And that's looking good. And then what we'll do is I'm gonna do the other side first, and then I'll show you how I just tweak this to add a little final layering to it to soften it up. So we're gonna set our guide by taking our first little corner piece from our little first side swoop and just the corner piece of the opposite side. We're gonna bring down to the center of that part. You can see my shortest piece up in here, and I'm just gonna literally try to match the angle that we have here and match it on this other side. Don't overthink it. It's really easy to match it up. It's when you like overthink it that you mess up. And so now we're just gonna continue our swoop, going back the other way. A little bit at a time. Come in, I'm changing the angle I create my sliver here and just coming down and going away from the face. Next section. So I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna actually take from the bottom now, and just you would come right up in to your last point. Just these little guys down here. Alrighty, so now at this point to finish off our face frame layers, what I'm gonna do is just take pieces of the hair here, and I'm gonna be bringing it straight forward and just lightly cutting into that to layer it, kind of going around with the head and over directing it across the face. And what that does is it just takes a little bit of weight out, so it's not so like harsh and blunty here. And you're gonna do the same on the other side. Come over across the face, cut. Okay, and then before we go to dry, I'm just gonna come directly across the top here, and I'm gonna check these top layers similar to how I did the back. So we're coming straight up and just cut into whatever's sticking out. Come up in that face frame, and you can direct it back slightly if you want as well. And that is looking good. Okay, so that is looking good. So now I'm gonna get her styled. For her styling products, I'm gonna use a little bit of Olaplex's bonding oil and Bedhead Small Talk just to give some nice volume and shape to her hair. The dryer I'm using is the SRI Dry Q. This is a very high-end luxurious dryer that allows you to get a salon style blowout at home. You have 4 airflow and 8 heat settings to choose from, so you can really customize it for your own hair needs. You can choose your settings by selecting from the options found on the side of the dryer. This dryer also gives you the option to lock your setting into place with its memory function, which is so nice. There's no more accidentally changing your setting halfway through your blow dry and you're like, what's going on? You get 3 attachments with this dryer, and my favorite attachment is the extra wide concentrator nozzle that gives maximum coverage when drying your hair. I was so excited to see this as a hairstylist of 16 years. Trust me when I say a wider nozzle like this makes such a difference. This allows the heat to be distributed on your brush fully to dry more of your hair at a time, giving you a more focused airflow when drying. And if those features weren't enough, not only is it extremely lightweight, it's also portable, folding to be the perfect blow dry travel companion when going out of town, taking up very little space but not skimping on the power. I will leave a link below to their website along with a discount code so you can check it out for yourself if you'd like to see it in action even more. I use it to create some fun hair looks on my other channel, Summer Beauty, and I will leave those videos linked below as well. Okay, so we've got her dried and styled, lovely blow dry, if I say so myself. So what we're gonna do is just come in and double check everything. She's a little off with her front face framing. She's a little bit longer right in here than she is on this side. So I'm just gonna literally take this up a little bit. So again, I blocked this camera, but you'd stand in front of the client and bring everything forward. So to do that, I'm just gonna sort of bring this to a point. I'm gonna grab this under piece here, same as this side. And we're gonna come to a point here. Woo, she's way off. I'm just gonna soften that up first, leave it a little longer at first, and then that'll set my guide. So what I'm gonna do is come in here, and we're just gonna blend it in a little bit more. You can take a little bit of this hair, move that bang out of the way, or just grab it, it'll be fine. So this is stemming actually from her bang. There we go. This is shorter here, and then it gets too long in here. So we're just gonna even out that little tails, like I like to call it sometimes if it's sticking out, and just go all the way down through the rest of that face frame to blend it in. This is why dry cutting is important. You're not gonna always get it like perfect all the time when wet. Like if you go to dry it and you're like, oh my God, it's not even, oh my gosh, don't freak out. Like that's normal. I've been doing hair 16 years. Like it's normal. You know, people don't always have their head stick straight, like in the same position. Sometimes the hair lays different, you know, so don't beat yourself up. That's why we dry cut, to go in and double check and look at everything. I am gonna texturize in here. She's a little thick for it being a side part over here. And I'm just gonna, instead of using my thinning shears, I'm just gonna point cut into it with my regular shears. I don't want to remove too much length. Okay, so we softened that side up. I feel like her bang is a little heavy, so that I'm just gonna, again, do the same thing Very lightly point cut, just to remove a little bit of that weight without being too much. And then we're gonna check out her back. Beautiful, looking good. Perfect, so I'm just gonna get her shaped up with some hairspray and we'll get you guys out of here. All right, here we have our finished and final look, creating all those nice, beautiful layers all throughout the hair with that nice side bang as well. I love the way this came together. All through the sides, you have the layers that connect into the back, and in the back, we have so much movement. It is beautiful. I love it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's tutorial. Make sure to check out SRI Dry Q. I'll leave it linked below along with that discount code, and I will see you on the next video.